Hello everyone and welcome to my new video. As you can see, I'm still in the woods and from your comments I realized that you really want to hear new scary stories from me. Today I prepared few stories for you that happened with me in my childhood. But firstly, little but very important personal prehistory. Don't turn the video off. If you follow me for a long time, you probably know that I was born on the southeast of Ukraine in the Zaporizhia region in a very small kind of countryside town. There are a lot of different factories in the Zaporizhia region and my town is not an exception. There are quite a few factories in my hometown as well. I just want to give you like verbal picture of how my hometown looks like. There is a river like literally in the middle of the town and a little forest, and in general my hometown looks like it consists of one floored houses, like it's mostly like suburban area, and there are few factories as I said. Also it has pretty cute center of the town, like the main street. It really looks cute in the summer because there are a lot of roses that are blooming during the summer season. My mom still lives in my hometown, but as for me, I cannot tell a lot of good things about my hometown where I lived first 18 years of my life. This place traumatized me a lot. And I want to mention that after I entered university and moved to another town, that new town became my love, my little love. Now let's forget all of this and return to the original hometown, because I want to describe it to you so you have the kind of verbal picture in your head. When I read It by Stephen King for the first time in my life, it was pretty late, by the way. I was terrified by Derry, by the city of the novel, way more than of Pennywise. And I started to realize that my hometown reminds me of Derry so much that I was like a little bit shocked. What's interesting, the more I lived outside of my hometown, the longer I lived outside of my hometown, the more I started to realize that my memories that I am starting to remember are pretty weird. It's very interesting when you have like kind of memory and you don't put too much attention to this memory, you don't think about it at all, like just a regular memory from your childhood. And like when you're 29, after many years after you left your hometown, you recall this memory and you realize how weird it sounds. Also, if you watched my video for a long time, you already heard from me that I was living in a house that was kind of stables for horses in the past. I lived in the very center of the town, like in the heart of the town. It was very center, and the buildings I was living in and surrounded with were the oldest in the town, but they were in such bad conditions that they were not created for people to live in. They were not suitable for people to live in at all. But my today's stories are not about buildings, but I had to tell you all of this so you had some kind of picture in your head. I made a little coffee pause. It is late evening and now I am going to tell you two stories, horror stories from my childhood. Today the stories will not be kind of paranormal, it will be more closely to urban legends. So I just decided to film video outside and Morty accidentally ran out. And he is not letting me to catch him. Morty! Oh! Okay. heard the first story when I was 4 years old. I don't know why it was so popular among the neighbor kids, because it was literally terrifying. I remember so well the first time when I heard this story. I was 4 years old, as I said, and there was a big pile of sand not far from the house, and I was doing some kind of thing there, digging something, I don't know, and older neighbor kids told me this story. So they told me that there is a maniac in our town, which is killing women and carrying the lower human parts of the bodies with himself in the bag, so he can have kind of intercourse with these lower human parts of the bodies anytime he wants. I still have no clue why older kids decided that it is a very good idea to tell a 4-year-old child such a story, but they did. I remember this story so well, and it's interesting that this story was very popular, like very popular among the kids. Everybody like in the yard were discussing this, but when like many years later I asked my mom if there really was maniac like this at that time, she said like she never heard about it, and our town is pretty small, and if something like this would happen, everybody would be aware of it. It's not a kind of paranormal creepy story, but anyway, I find this situation kind of weird when a bunch of very small children created such kind of urban legend. I don't know why. The next story will be a bit more detailed, because it was happening exactly with me and with those neighbor kids that I shared the common yard with. So all of the children in our yard were older than me, minimum on 3 years. So if I was 5, the youngest child from that little gang was 8, and it all were girls. So I was the youngest, and I was like very small, and most of times older girls didn't want to play with me because they were like 8-9 years old and I was 5, and I think it wasn't very interesting for them, but they were using me very often for some kind of things, like to go and buy them something when they were lazy, or they always asked me, like it wasn't asking, it was forcing, let's say like this. They were forcing me to collect bottles from the beer from the garbage, so they can like sell these bottles and to buy some kind of yummies. And I always did this because I wanted them to play with me, to spend time with me, and now it feels awkward, but back to the time it was okay, and they never shared with me those yummies. And often they were using me as a guard to watch out when they were doing something wrong. So here is the story. I was like about 5 years old and they were a little bit older, and it was summer, and they told me that there is a garden with pears somewhere not far from our house. I was very small, and of course I was not allowed to go too far from the house. I was allowed to play like in the yard, in our yard and in the common yard, so my granny was able to see me all the time. And this kind of garden was located like 50 or 80 meters from the house, like not very far from, but this was very unusual for me. There were houses, like those long houses that were divided for many people to live in, And we had our group of such houses, and there was like other group of such houses like 50 or 80 meters from my house. And there was an old building that was kind of cafe back to the times. And they told me to watch out in the place between that cafe and other group of houses. They told me to stay on the road and to watch out, so nobody will see what they are doing. They knew that there is a keeper in this garden, which is the garden. So I stayed near the road as they told me, and all other kids sneaked into the hole in the fence into that pear garden. I was waiting for them for a long time, but in a while they like ran out of the hole with the pears, laughing and doing stuff like they were very glad that they stole the pears. I don't remember any details from that moment. I bet that I didn't get any pears. So why this story is creepy? Back to the times, all of the children in our common yard were discussing this garden, and we're talking about this garden as about routine thing. It was very common for them to go and steal pears from that garden. After many years after that day, I already left my hometown. I already entered university and moved to other town and lived there a few years. So after really many years, I was living with my best friend Kate. And one evening we got really that nostalgia vibe and decided to open Google Maps and to scroll our hometown and to look for some places, And I decided to see on the Google Maps what that house looks like and what that street looks like. And in few minutes after watching on my house and on surroundings, I remembered this story, and I looked at that place between that cafe and another group of houses, and there was no place for any garden. It wasn't possible for any garden, even for few trees, to be located there. And I questioned myself what that hole in the fence led to. They all were talking about exactly the garden, and it was a routine thing for them to go and steal pears from that place, but there was no garden. They were not trying to pretend like there was a garden. It wasn't like a show for me. I was the smallest child in the group and I was nothing for them. And I found this weird thing 20 years later. And after I found this kind of weird memory, I visited that place. And there was no place for the garden. There was a cafe very close to the houses. There was no even trees. And 100% it wasn't a dream. It wasn't kind of child fantasy, because when I was a child, it wasn't kind of mystical for me. It was just a routine thing, like children stealing pears. And until this moment, I have zero idea where did those children go through that hole in that fence. So guys, it is time for me to finish this video already. Don't forget to lock the doors, check your windows, and I will see you in the next video.